Hello and welcome to the Sidebar, presented by True Crime News, taking you inside the courtrooms of high-profile and notorious cases from across the country. I'm your host, Joshua Ritter. I'm a criminal defense lawyer based in Los Angeles and previously an LA County prosecutor for nearly a decade. You can find me on all social platforms at Joshua Ritter ESQ or at joshuaritter.com. We are recording this on Wednesday, August 13th, 2025. In this week's episode, the ongoing murder trial of a former military prosecutor accused of dismembering his wife. Plus, a man who faked his own death and assumed a new identity faces trial for sexual assault over 15 years later. But first, the quickly approaching trial of Donna Adelson as the matriarch at the center of a custody battle murder plot indicates she may take the stand. Today, we are joined by Angenette Levy, an Emmy-nominated reporter, correspondent on the Law and Crime Network, and host of the Crime Fix podcast. Angenette, welcome back.
Thanks for having me back, Josh. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm excited for you to be here, too, because I know that you are in the middle of the true crime world. I know that a lot of these cases you're following very closely. I know Donna Adelson, for sure, is one of the ones that I'm most interested hearing your thoughts on. So let's just jump into that one right away. Out of Tallahassee, Florida, Donna Adelson's trial is slated to begin next week as the 75-year-old mother faces charges in the murder plot that left the father of her grandchildren dead. Adelson, the family matriarch, is the last to see trial after the convictions of her son, Charlie Adelson, the hitmen, Sigfredo Garcia and Luis Rivera, as well as Catherine McBanois, the middlewoman connecting the shooters to the Adelson family. Adelson allegedly orchestrated the killing of her son-in-law, Dan Markel, amid a bitter custody battle with her daughter, Wendy Adelson. Reportedly, the Adelsons wanted the couple's children to relocate to the Miami area. However, Markel, then an FSU professor in Tallahassee, was granted 50-50 custody. At Adelson's final pretrial hearing last week, her defense sought to suppress evidence from two jailhouse informants, as well as evidence that Adelson was arrested boarding a one-way flight to Vietnam in what prosecutors claim was an attempt to flee. These motions were unsuccessful, with the judge ruling the evidence will be admissible provided it's introduced appropriately. It was also suggested by the defense that Adelson would take the stand to testify about her fear of the Latin Kings, which her defense claims gunman Rivera was involved with. While Adelson's son, Charlie, also opted to take the stand, that trial did not go in his favor, so we'll wait to see if Adelson's testimony in this trial can sway a jury this time around. This case is incredible because I view it almost as one overarching case that's just had several different defendants tried at different times. But if you want to consider it that way, it's like we've had several different seasons and we're now at the finale here, we think. Do you think this trial with Donna, the matriarch, as everyone refers to her as, the one that people believe were actually pulling the strings, is that going to be kind of a rerun of Charlie's trial, or do you expect things to be a little bit different this time around?
Well, it could be partly rerun, Josh, but it could be also a sequel, if you will. And I say that because Donna, helped create evidence against her for the state of Florida. I mean, she is on jail calls where she didn't hang up. She thought she got disconnected from Charlie after his conviction, and she's on there talking about, going to Vietnam. She's saying how she and Harvey need to get things together and they're going to flee to Vietnam. Or she's not saying she's fleeing. She kind of got up on the stand at a pretrial hearing and talked about how, oh, well, we just were going to go on a vacation. And yeah, we bought a one-way ticket, but, that's just what we were going to do because we just needed to get away and like all this stuff. But she clearly knew on that jail call when you listen to it that they were coming for her next. And she was getting the information from Dan Rauschbaum, the attorney for Charlie Adelson. Dan Rauschbaum actually represented Donna Adelson in the beginning of this and then represented Charlie at trial. He was going to represent her at her trial that was supposed to begin last year. And then Charlie said, no, I'm not waiving the conflict. It was a big mess. The whole thing blew up. I mean, so I don't think it's going to necessarily be a rerun. I think maybe potentially we could see some new things coming out of this. There's also, I reported this on my podcast, there's a secret investigation. There's a new investigation that has been taking place in this case involving wiretaps. And so that started, if I recall correctly, last fall, I believe. I would have to go back and double check. I've got so many cases flying around in my head, but there was a new investigation that started and it involved wiretaps. So there's this new kind of investigation they've referred to, but they won't really reveal any details about it. So these prosecutors, they are not done. They are
Yeah.
not done. And so they've been very good at holding their cards, close to the vest and not revealing what they're doing and where they're going next. So I think that we could see maybe a couple of surprises here.
Well, one of the surprises that has already been kind of, we've gotten a sneak preview of, and I'm surprised that we're even hearing about it this early on, but her attorneys, last time they were in court, indicated to the judge that she intends to testify. And it's funny because I say that that's surprising to me because usually defense attorneys are very tight-lipped, very kind of, a little bit cute about whether or not their client will ever testify. They say, well, they want to, or they want their story to be heard, and they kind of hint at it, but they never commit to it. They've essentially committed to this. Doesn't mean they have to. They could do the trial, change their mind. They're not obligated. But what do you think about her actually testifying? Because her son testified, that didn't go too well for him. And I can't imagine she's up to the job of doing any better under cross-examination in her trial. But what are your thoughts on that?
Well, but I think they have to, honestly. I think that she has to testify. And when I say that, and they can always change their mind. This is pretrial, so they
Right.
don't have to put her up there it could be a game day decision. He could just be, this could be bluster for, who knows. But I think Donna wants to testify, and I think that she thinks that she can talk her way out of this and explain everything, just like Charlie did with the double extortion, which sounded like complete nonsense. I have to reiterate how the double extortion, and then there was double extortion. I mean, I just was like watching Charlie Adelson's trial. I was like, dude, really? You've got an answer for everything. Like, if you're
Yeah.
being doubly extorted, guess what? Go to the feds.
Yeah.
Like, go to the cops and say, oh my God, these gang people are like extorting me or whatever. I mean, it just was so insane. But I feel like they may think this is their only shot because you've got Donna. Who else is going to explain the jail calls where
Yeah.
she's on the hot mic jail calls? That's what I call them, talking about how they've got to get out of here and take care of stuff, and they've got to do this and they've got to do that. Donna's the only one that can explain that. Charlie is going to be called to testify. God only knows what he's going to say. We still don't know what he's going to say. Wendy's going to get up there, her daughter, under a limited immunity agreement, and she is going to testify. And we kind of know what she is going to say based on her testimony in the prior trials. But who knows what else she'll say, because now it's going to be directed at, now the questioning will be directed at Wendy regarding her mother, not these other players. So she's the only one who can explain all of this. And then the bump and the wiretaps. I mean, like the bump and the wiretaps, she's calling Charlie and she's like, she's trying to explain to Charlie what happened. So who else is going to be able to explain what in the heck she's talking about? And is she going to go with the double extortion thing? I mean, that's just going to sound silly. So maybe they've got something else cooking that they're going to present. And Donna's the only one who can explain it. And maybe they think like 75-year-old grandma up there in a sweater, that the jury will believe her.
I think that last point that you just made makes me wonder if that might be a lot of the reason behind this too, because do they hope that, like you said, she'll come in there, a woman advanced in age, who knows how they're going to have her dressed? A lot of this comes down to what did she know and when did she know it? And if she gets on the stand and comes across as sympathetic and I'm caught up in this whole thing and I'm just blindsided and I can't believe this is going on and woe is me and how in the world could I be the mastermind behind this brutal assassination? Do you think that could be it? Just maybe they're hoping she comes across as sympathetic to one or two jurors?
She's the only one. Like these defense attorneys have their work cut out for them. So they may feel like this is, and she may be insisting upon it.
That's
They may
also
not
true.
have a lot of client control here. She may be insisting upon it, and they may feel like they have no other way to defend this case but to put the 75-year-old woman up there. And maybe they are just hoping for one or two jurors to believe her.
That's a really good point, though, because, many times we analyze these things and say, well, that's a strategy decision. It could be not a strategy decision at all. It could be like to your point, what else are they going to do? They've got to have answers to this stuff, and she's the only one who can provide them. And to your point, the one thing that a defendant has control over, the defense attorneys cannot say no to, is whether or not she testifies. And you're right. She could have turned to them and said, I don't care what you say. I'm getting up there and I'm going to talk. And that's just what they're going to do. Last week, the world of Donna Adelson and the Adelson saga was kind of lit on fire because there were reports that a plea deal had been made. And this was a supposedly an offer for her to testify against her daughter, Wendy, who has not been indicted, in exchange for a time served offer, meaning she would get out. I'm just asking you because it's kind of recently in the news. You got any thoughts on that? Any insights in that? Do you believe that took place? Do you believe that's even something the prosecution would offer?
No, I don't believe the prosecution would offer that. I believe that there are plea discussions in every case.
Yeah.
I feel like there are always discussions in every case. Discussions and an offer to me are two different things. I don't know if you see it that the same
Oh,
way, Josh.
100%. Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
To me, if you say she was offered time served in exchange for giving up Wendy, that makes it sound to me like the prosecution went to her and made an offer. I don't think that happened. I think maybe there were discussions. I don't see anybody in a murder conspiracy like this, and given the facts presented by the prosecution in this case previously, I don't see the prosecution saying, yeah, Donna, give us Wendy and we'll let you go home.
Yeah.
Because this is like the horrific execution of a man who did nothing except be a dad. I mean, it's a hired hit.
Yeah.
That's what they're alleging. And you're telling me they're going to let Donna go home for that? No.
I agree.
They may have said give up Wendy and we'll do we'll do something, but I don't buy that they said give us Wendy and we'll let you go home. I don't buy that, and I don't buy that there was an offer that the prosecution went to them. There may have been some discussions, but I think there are discussions in every case. And I actually called Georgia Kappelman after that came out, and I was like, "Hey, is there any truth to this?" And she was like, she sounded frustrated, and she just told me that there was no offer made. I think I tweeted whatever she said to me. So I'm not going to say everything she said to me, but she was very firm that there was no offer made. So there may have been discussions, but there are always discussions in cases.
Yeah.
I mean, most cases resolve by plea.
I agree with you. I mean, listen, I wasn't there. I don't know what was said in court. I agree with you that discussions are very different than offers. Wherever you want to draw the line is, I guess, subjective. But I do find it almost beyond something I would feel is believable in this case, especially with the professionalism that the prosecution has demonstrated up until this point, that they would be willing to let her walk for something so horrible just in exchange to get somebody else. It just doesn't make sense to me. That the math doesn't math for me. But
Right.
we are talking about Wendy, and they do feel that I do believe that they feel Wendy's involved, and that I
Of
do
course they
believe
do.
that they feel that she's central to this whole thing. So I'm going to do to you what is always done to me whenever I'm a guest. And so we're talking about the Adelson case. Everybody always at the end of it goes, are they going to charge Wendy Adelson? What do you think? Are they going to charge Wendy Adelson?
I just don't know. I don't, I hate being wrong, right? Nobody wants
Yeah.
to be wrong. So here's the deal, Josh. Let's talk about it like this. Wendy is an unindicted co-conspirator.
Mm-hmm.
So is Harvey, for that matter.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Wendy is an unindicted co-conspirator. This was Wendy's ex-husband. Wendy wanted out of Tallahassee. She did not want to be there anymore. She did not want to be married to Dan. This whole thing about the TV and how the TV like needed to be repaired. Wendy is the one who knew Dan's schedule. She knew what he did every day. She's the one that drove by the crime scene and, oh, I just happened to be going by because I was going to pick up I forget, was it bourbon or whiskey or something? I forget what she said she was doing. Um, this is all regarding what Wendy, wanted. And then you've got Donna sending the emails to Wendy. So obviously, the prosecution believes that Wendy was central to this and that Donna and Charlie, I think, were the masterminds. And maybe it was supposed to be kind of like keep her out of it because of, then she has plausible deniability. But at the same time, wink, wink, nod, nod, they obviously believe she was involved. Have they come up with more? And the way they've operated in this case is that after each conviction, let's say Donna is convicted, I think then we'll find out. But I feel like after every conviction in this case, it's like they're working their way up the chain.
Yeah.
And so does this new investigation have something to do with, getting more dirt on Harvey and Wendy? I mean, they are unindicted co-conspirators, which means the prosecution believes they conspired to kill Dan Markel. They haven't charged them yet.
No. I will say this. I don't know if she's going to get indicted either, but I know they're not going to let her on a one-way flight to Vietnam anytime soon.
No.
I can be sure of that.
No, I'm
they
sure
are
she's
keeping
like
very
on the watch list or something.
They're keeping very close tabs on her movements. I'm pretty sure of that. Yeah, I don't.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I just don't see this happening. And I think the prosecution views it the same way. I don't think they see any of this taking place unless somewhere along the line, Wendy gave the go ahead to take the father of her children, to go ahead and murder her ex-husband. I just don't see Donna and Charlie and everyone acting independent of somehow getting her blessing on all of that. But, like you said, she's unindicted at this point. We will see how this whole thing plays out.
Can I add
Yeah,
one
go ahead,
thing?
please.
Someone has pointed out to me, and I don't want to like go too deep into the weeds on this, only because I have to do more digging on it myself, that there is a friend of Wendy's who is now on the witness list for Donna's trial.
Oh,
So,
interesting.
ooh, ooh,
Yeah, who
and there's
knows?
and Wendy only has like, limited immunity. It's not like she's been given like some blanket,
No,
like
she doesn't
get out
have
of
blanket
jail.
immunity on this whole thing.
Yeah,
Right. Yeah.
right.
Yeah. If it were any other case, like you said, it does seem like they're just slowly continuing to methodically close their net. And if it were any other case, I would have said it's past that time, but not in this case. So we will stay tuned, and everybody else should.
I think the best piece of money advice that I ever got was that it's never too small an amount to save. It really isn't. That's why today's podcast is sponsored by Acorns, because Acorns is the financial wellness app that helps you invest for your future, save for tomorrow, and spend smarter today. It makes it easy for you to start doing more with your money, even rounding up. This is really important, rounding up your spare change to invest automatically. You don't need to be a financial expert. Acorns builds a smart, diversified portfolio for you, so your money is working even when you're not thinking about it. I know investing can be confusing at times. There's no one way to do it, and there's no rule book that you must follow. That's one of the reasons I like Acorns. It makes investing simple. Sign up now, and Acorns will boost your new account with a $5 bonus investment. Join the over 14 million all-time customers who have already saved and invested over $25 billion with Acorns. Head to acorns.com/TCN or download the Acorns app to get started. Paid non-client endorsement compensation provides incentive to positively promote Acorns. Tier 2 compensation provided. Investing involves risk. Acorns Advisors, LLC, is an SEC registered investment advisor. View important disclosures at acorns.com/TCN.
Let's move along to Liberty County, Georgia, where a man currently on trial for beheading his wife faced testimony from women he had married before and after the alleged murder. Nicholas Kassotis faces multiple charges on the brutal murder and dismemberment of his wife, Mindy Kassotis, whose body parts were strewn across a rural 3-mile radius. Mindy's body had been drained of blood and so badly disfigured that it took over a year for investigators to identify her body. Prosecutors say Kassotis was motivated in the murder by an attempt to flee a $1.5 million judgment after a divorce from his first wife, along with an affair with a woman who would become his third wife. However, Kassotis maintains that he was on the run with Mindy on the advice of his handler, a shadowy figure named Jim McIntyre, who authorities claim does not exist. Kassotis' first wife, Heather Thomas, testified that the man didn't adhere to the couple's divorce agreement, refusing to pay despite telling the court he was worth $32 million. Thomas also testified that she recognized the sketch released by law enforcement to identify Mindy's remains and called GBI immediately to say that the unidentified woman looked shockingly like Mindy. Prosecutors also called Kassotis' third wife, Samantha Kolesnik, who testified that she had been exchanging messages with the man while he was married to Mindy. However, Kolesnik claims that the pair never met in person until December of 2022, a couple of weeks after Mindy's remains were discovered. Kassotis told the man he was a widower after the death of his previous wife and unborn child 2 years earlier. Kassotis and Kolesnik later married, but the marriage was annulled after his arrest. Prosecutors have wrapped up their case with Kassotis, and the defendant is currently testifying as we record this episode. All right, lot of moving parts, lot to unwind here.
Yeah.
But I just want your thoughts on the optics of a man accused of murdering his wife. His previous wife that he had divorced calls him a liar and a cheat. His new wife, who has now annulled that marriage, calls him a liar and a cheat. How impactful is that? Just from a purely can he be believed perspective for a man who's now testifying in front of that same jury saying, you got to believe me.
Well, I guess it will come down to, I guess the defense is probably trying to make it out to be, or wants it to be, who do you believe?
Yeah.
They're calling him a liar. They're just bitter. Who do you believe? And they'll say, the defense is going to be like, my guy's this like former, military lawyer. Look at him. He got up here and he answered questions. He faced cross-examination. The state, they can't prove this case beyond a reasonable doubt, et cetera, et cetera. But when you've got these people getting up there and saying you can't believe him, you can't trust him, he's a liar, and then you've got this poor woman dead and dismembered, and my God, it's just like the most grisly, disgusting, graphic thing. I don't know. And he's a former military lawyer. It kind of makes you think like, well, he might have the know-how to do something like this.
Mm-hmm.
He just didn't maybe do it maybe he didn't evade getting caught the way that he should have. Maybe he didn't maybe he wasn't quite as smart about it as he should have been. So it could be tough for him, or he could really charm this jury and get out of it.
No. Well, a lot is going to depend on that. I always feel that when the defendant takes the stand, and I'm not saying this is like an absolute rule, but I feel like when the defendant takes the stand, you can almost throw out everything that took place ahead of that, because they're either going to knock it out of the park and the jurors are going to believe them, or some of them is going to believe them, or the jurors are going to find one thing that person's dishonest about, one thing that calls into question their veracity, and say, that's it. The guy's not only accused of murder, which he probably did, but he lied to me in court, and that's enough for me to not believe him. I really feel like there's so much writing on that jurors almost, not like I'm saying that they disregard, but it's almost all of that beforehand kind of becomes the background noise to what the defendant does and how they perform on the stand. To that point, though, this is not a defense of purely, you can't prove it, no beyond a reasonable doubt. There's a lot of evidence here that doesn't support this. They've got this alternate theory that they're presenting. They don't assume a burden, but when you start to introduce something like, hey, this guy, Jim McIntyre, who they, apparently was a FBI agent or whatever he is, he's in charge of their finances. Who knows if they're saying he's responsible for the murders or if he was just telling them somebody's after them. I can't even unravel it myself. Doesn't that seem to put the defense at like a disadvantage to bring something that kind of wild in front of the jury? Or is that kind of the point, is to confuse the jury?
Could be to confuse them, but I'm like, where's Jim?
Yeah, right.
Where was Jim? Like, why didn't we hear from, if I'm the prosecutor, why didn't we hear from Jim?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, if he's your handler and he like, where was Jim?
Yeah.
Like Jim can explain all of this and make it all make sense, right? So, that's Jim holds the keys, to explaining everything, it sounds like. And if you don't call Jim, as a defense attorney, I think you've kind of been derelict in your duties, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Call Jim or give us a really good explanation as to why you're not calling Jim. But I don't know if we're going to hear that.
Jim is in, he's on an undercover operation somewhere. And like, come on, really?
Yeah.
You are going to make every effort to find Jim because Jim keeps this from getting to this point.
So crazy. So crazy. For our last case out of Salt Lake City, Utah, a man who allegedly faked his death and fled the U.S. to avoid sexual assault charges is facing his first trial on a charge of rape. Nicholas Rossi made international headlines when he was arrested in Scotland in December of 2021 after claiming that he was an Irish orphan named Arthur Knight. At the time, Rossi fiercely defended his Irish identity despite authorities' claims of multiple sexual offenses and fraud spanning several U.S. jurisdictions. However, the salacious claims of international fraud will not make their way into this trial, which concerns a charge of rape allegedly committed against a former partner. Rossi and the victim reportedly had a fast-moving romance, with the pair meeting when the vulnerable victim had recently recovered from a brain injury. According to the victim, the pair's relationship quickly escalated, with the couple shopping for engagement rings after only 2 weeks of dating. Rossi allegedly couldn't pay for the rings, though, so the victim footed the bill along with numerous other expenses throughout their brief engagement. However, Rossi's behavior became increasingly abusive, according to the victim, and when she tried to leave, she claims he sexually assaulted her. Rossi's defense claims that the woman's allegations, which weren't brought to light until after the man's high-profile international arrest, are a fabrication prompted by her resentment of Rossi for taking financial advantage of the victim. While the case has been the focus of international tabloids, it would be up to a jury to judge Rossi's credibility, and we will continue to update you as this case progresses. This case has a lot of wild noise around it. His escape and the assuming of a new identity and, even using a fake accent in court at some occasions. But at the core of it, we have a case that I'm curious to hear your thoughts because it's not entirely a slam dunk. It's a case that's 17 years old. There's allegations that the alleged victim has ulterior motives. In other words, that she's trying to get back at him for leaving her and, taking money. She's also responding to his high profile arrest. And you've got a allegation of assault in the midst of an otherwise consensual relationship. Does that, you think, cause problems for the actual prosecution of this case?
I don't know. I think the guy is just such a hot mess and he's lied so many times for so very long. Um, I could see him I could see him being convicted very easily, but I mean there could be some issues for the prosecution as well. I I just think Nicholas Rossi is he's such a liar and a charlatan. And the fact that he was able to like keep up this whole, I mean, he's now kind of admitted that he is Nicholas Rossi. Like, I forget how recently that happened, but he did kind of finally admit, like, yeah, I am him. After everybody knew it was him. I just feel like he's just such a con man and just such a liar that I mean, maybe there could be some issues, but at the same time, I think that all of his lies are going to be his undoing. And he tried to keep this up for so very long. And he's on national television. Like I remember seeing a Dateline with Andrea Canning, and he's like keeping this whole thing up with like the oxygen mask, and it's the whole thing's a mess.
Yeah.
I think he's going to prison for a really long time.
To that,
what do you think?
Well, no, to that point of the oxygen mask. It does seem like he is a person who's been living lies for so long that he can't even kind of remove himself from his own delusion and fantasy for even to stand trial because he's showing up to court in a wheelchair and an oxygen mask.
It's so ridiculous.
Is that, I'm curious, do jurors look at that and do they go, oh, perhaps sympathetic? Or do they look at that and go, well, it's all part of this. It's all fake. The whole thing's fake. Even him here in court, he's putting on a show. He's trying to con us. To your point, he's a charlatan and he's trying to con us even as he sits here in court.
I mean, I'm not going to. I mean, this year, if this year tells us anything with some of these cases that we've watched unfold in other states, yes, I'm going to say maybe one or two jurors. It's possible because there are things I've watched happen that I thought wouldn't happen, and then they did. So maybe it's possible. But any prosecutor handling this case of Nicholas Rossi, I mean, I would be pointing right at the guy if I were the prosecutor and saying it's all fake, and I'm sure that they've got evidence to show that it's fake. They've got to have evidence of him being just fine in the jail. They've got to have, I mean.
That's really interesting. I don't mean to cut you off, but you made me think of something. That is so interesting. His behavior in court might even open up the prosecution to bring in evidence that they might not otherwise be able to, just to refute the fact that he doesn't need a wheelchair or an oxygen mask, right? If they've got photographs of him or videotape of him appearing in court, not doing any of that. And maybe perhaps he's using an Irish accent while he's doing it. You know what I'm saying? There might be some clever stuff the prosecution could get in front of the jury just to point out the fact that he's still a fraud.
Well, and what if he's like in his jail cell doing push-ups or something?
Right.
I don't know. I mean, he doesn't look like a push-ups kind of guy, but
yeah.
I mean, maybe there is video of him in the jail somewhere.
Yeah.
How many like I remember this serial killer guy that I covered when I worked in local news, Anthony Kirkland, and he would just act up in the jail and act like a fool. And they'd have to put him in the restraint chair to get him to come over and like push him over from the jail in the restraint chair. And the judge basically told him like, I heard what you've been doing over there. I don't think you want the jury to see you in the restraint chair, as being resentenced on the death penalty. He was being resentenced. His death penalty, his death sentence was vacated by the Ohio Supreme Court. And so the judge was like, I don't think you want the jury seeing you in the restraint chair. So he was basically laying down the law. So like, I think you need to behave. So my point being, there's always going to be something that they could bring in. I'm assuming Nicholas Rossi is a different person when the TV cameras and the court cameras are not on him. So I don't know, just my feeling.
Yeah. Crazy case. A lot of crazy. They're all crazy, but these in particular are just kind of get your head spinning. But that is all that we've got for you this week. But I have a very interesting announcement that I want to say before we thank you, Angenette, and let you go. This year at CrimeCon for the Clue Awards, there is a category for outstanding podcasts, outstanding episodic series for podcasts. Nominated in that category is, first of all, True Crime News, this very channel for the True Crime News podcast hosted by Anna Garcia. Also nominated in that same category is Crime Fix with Angenette Levy. So congratulations for that.
Thank you.
Also nominated in that same category is my podcast, Courtroom Confidential. So we're all going to be out there in Denver, all in the same category. How fun is that?
Yeah, congratulations to you, Josh. We've only texted about this, and we're both so busy that we don't really ever get to like actually speak to one another. But yes, it'll be really cool. And I didn't realize that Anna Garcia's podcast was in there too. So wild. That is so wild. And
it's fun.
I feel like we're in really good company with this nomination.
Absolutely.
So it's just a really big thrill to be nominated. Like I was kind of shocked when I got the email that like I was in the final round. So very well deserved. And I, like you said, I was very honored to be in the same category as you and this channel. So Angenette, thank you again for so much for coming on. Where can people find out more about you and all the work that you're doing? Well, I have obviously my Law and Crime podcast, Crime Fix. That's on Law and Crime's YouTube channel. But I also have a personal YouTube channel where I hop on there and do something a little more laid back. It's Angenette Levy on YouTube, just Angenette Levy. So check it out.
Check it out, everybody. I'm your host, Josh Ritter. You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Joshua Ritter ESQ. And like I said, if you want to hear my thoughts and coverage on even more true crime cases, please check out my brand new YouTube channel, Courtroom Confidential. And you can, of course, find all of our Sidebar episodes wherever you get your podcasts. And we would love to hear from you. If you've got questions or comments you'd like us to address, please tweet us your questions with the hashtag TCN Sidebar. And thank you again for joining us at the True Crime News Sidebar.